As of the release of this video, the DioField Chronicle is about a month away, and I recently had the opportunity to play through the early stages of the game. Now, when I first heard about the DioField Chronicle, it really piqued my interest, being a fan of tactical RPGs and all, and then I heard that it was being developed by Lancarse. My opinions on their last game are pretty well known. But this game is being co-developed by Square-Enix this time, so I was still somewhat hopeful that a certain level of quality would be maintained. And I must say, at least with the portion of the game that I got to play, I had a pretty good time. I won't delve into the story of the DioField Chronicle, as the early stages of the game don't really present enough to form any real opinions on. What I will say though is that it's set up quite nicely to portray a pretty typical story about war and politics through the eyes of a group of mercenaries. For what it's worth, the characters did seem interesting, though somewhat generic, but that's to be expected early on. I fully anticipate them to develop into more unique characters as their backstories and interactions with each other are further explored in the full game. The Japanese voice acting was also on point, especially the female mage companion Valtakine, whose diabolical laugh casting fire on the enemies never got old. Oh god, that laugh while she's casting meteor. Speaking of which, let's move on to what we can discuss, starting with combat, which at first glance may appear to be similar to an RTS game, just with much fewer units to control. In actuality though, it's more similar to the real-time with pause combat systems found in many CRPGs. You have up to 4 party members that you can issue commands to, whether that be movement, attacking enemies, and or using skills. And when movement is concerned, you can opt to select each party member individually, or select them all as a group and have them move together. You can even set waypoints with which to influence their pathing, which can be helpful for avoiding traps or terrain damage, or for getting a character into a specific position in order to flank an enemy. The pause portion of combat comes into play once you've actually selected one or more of your party members. At this time, the game pauses, letting you decide what you wish to do. You can tell a party member where to move, as already mentioned, you can use a skill, or you can have them attack an enemy. If you have them attack an enemy, for example, the selected party member or members will path to that enemy and begin auto-attacking them. At any time while they are engaged with the enemy, you can select a party member again and choose to issue a skill command. This can be in the form of a shield bash from your tank character, which can interrupt enemy skills, or it can be something like throwing out a heal with your healer. Depending on the skill chosen, it will consume a portion of that character's EP, which is the resource needed to actually use skills, and it will also put that character on cooldown. That is to say, they won't be able to use the skill again for a set period of time, the duration of which is determined by the skill used. They can still move, attack, and use items, but they just won't be able to use another skill until the cooldown is up. Now, while you are managing your unit pathing to enemies and what skills to use and when, you also want to be on the lookout for enemy skills. These are telegraphed by red circles and cones on the ground that gradually fill in as a means of showing where their skill will land and how long it has until it actually goes off. In these situations, you can choose to interrupt the skill as stated previously, or if you think you have the time to do so, you can issue a command to any of your party members in the way and have them move out of harm's way. Honestly, it's an interesting combat system that I enjoyed throughout my time with the DioField Chronicles, and I do look forward to seeing how it evolves in the game's full release. That being said though, there are still a few things left to mention about combat before we move on. First is a circular gauge in the lower right hand corner of the screen. As you defeat enemies or pick up orbs on the battlefield, more on that in a second, this gauge will fill up. This gauge is actually called the Magilimic Orb, and it's used for casting very powerful spells that are basically summons. The first you get access to is Bahamut, which deals heavy damage in a large area, but eventually you get access to others, such as one that heals your entire party. Now about those orbs that I mentioned you can pick up on the battlefield. Throughout a mission, you will see green, blue, and purple orbs scattered about a combat map. Picking these up will replenish or fill certain resources for you, with green replenishing the HP of all of your party members, purple replenishing EP, and the blue orbs filling up the Magilimic Orb gauge. I found it worthwhile to have the healer go pick up blue and purple orbs mid-combat when healing wasn't necessary, while saving the green orbs for after combat unless the extra healing was necessary. Now, if you've been watching the footage in the background, which by the way was taken from my stream over at twitch.tv/Rozalin Gaming, and thought that the combat looked really slow, well, you'd be correct. However, the devs have already included a solution. At any time during a mission, you can press right on the directional pad to increase the speed of combat, and this can be done multiple times should you desire. I personally didn't use this feature, but I can definitely see myself making use of it after I become more familiar with the game's combat system. Finally, let's briefly go over what you do outside of battle in the DioField Chronicle. When not in battle, you will find yourself in your base of operations for the mercenary group your party belongs to. From here you can do a number of things, including talking to your party members, accepting side quests, and of course progressing the game's main story. You will also find a shop with which you can buy weapons and accessories, with weapons being particularly important as they are what dictate which skills you can use on a given character. Each character can only equip one type of weapon, and each weapon has a different skill set, though some skills do overlap. Though this system may seem a bit limiting, there is one way in which you can increase the number of skills that a given character can use, and that is through the adjutant system. Basically, once you have more than 4 party members, you can assign the extras as adjutants to the ones in your main party. Doing so will allow the character to use their adjutant's skills in battle. Speaking of skills, as you progress through the game, you will gain access to the ability to upgrade your skills and passive abilities. Passives can be upgraded at any time that you have access to the party menu, as well as the requisite points to do so, but for skills, you need to visit the appropriate NPC in your base of operations. Here you will find skill trees for each weapon type and can unlock and improve the skills as you see fit, though some unlocks are gated behind game progression. The same NPC also has features that weren't yet available to me, but I can guess that equipment crafting at the very least will be one of them, and possibly one that has to deal with character classes. Character classes being what determines which weapons a character can use. The last major thing in our base that I got access to during my time with the DioField Chronicle was an NPC that let me redo past battles. An excellent feature should you want to do a little bit of grinding for extra levels, or if you wanted to go back and try and complete any side objectives you may have missed. And that's really about it for what was available for me to play. There is a demo out, so if you want to try out the game for yourself, the first chapter of the game is playable, and I encourage you to give it a shot. I had more fun with the game than I anticipated, though I still have my reservations given I was in a similar situation with Lancarse's previous release. Now, as to whether I will actually end up picking up the DioField Chronicle and covering it, that I don't know. It does come out a week before Kuro no Kiseki 2, so scheduling wise it is going to be a little bit rough. But that's it. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Also, if you have any questions about this video, the DioField Chronicle, or any other game that I cover, feel free to hit me up over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Rozalin Gaming or my Discord server, both of which are linked in the video description below. Until next time, take care.